Let me say this, because I've seen two comments in here. I don't know if anybody's been watching this. I'm not going to mention the names of the people who say this, but I've seen two of them in this comment section, and I'll just read one of them verbatim. I get enough crap about my president without having to listen to Scott Ott, Mr. Never Trumper, piling on more. Let him go work for CNN. I don't know how I can be more clear about this. I really don't. I've said it 100 times, so I'll say it 101 times. I pay Scott Ott to play that role, and he plays that role very, very well. The harder Scott Ott fights at me, the better I can respond, and the more encompassing the counter argument becomes. Scott Ott is an enormous patriot. Scott Ott understands and loves his Constitution better than anybody I've ever met. And Scott Ott was and remains critical of aspects of Donald Trump, but Scott Ott is 100% behind Trump versus the rest of these people. Scott Ott is taking a lot of crap over something, and it bothers him, and it bothers me more. If you can't understand that I'm paying him to be this guy, then what do I have to do? I'd be delighted, and I'm not being facetious and I'm not being flip here. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If you would like me to send you a personal email explaining this, I will do it. But Scott Ott is a patriot, and Scott Ott is a conservative, and Scott Ott is the best man I know. And for him to continue to press the attack on me is for me to show that no matter what you come back at me with, you can't win the argument. It is entirely the point of that show that there's an argument. We don't hear arguments. All we hear is our side talks, their side talks. When Scott comes at me with these things, there are moments, and if you watch, I don't want to give this away, but I might as well, so it's important. Listen carefully. If you watch Bill Whittle now, Scott will ask a question, I'll answer. Scott will rebut, I'll answer. Many times, not every show, but many times, Scott will come back with something, and you'll see me listening, and you might even see just a little tiny little flicker of my eyes. And that is the sound of me going, get out the little cane, little hat, and doing a little tap dance, because I'm going to need 4 or 5 seconds to figure out what the answer to this attack is. And I've never failed to come up with that answer. And that is just excellent work on his part. I'd be curious to know a little bit about the feedback of this. I didn't lead with this. I certainly wasn't planning on talking about this, but I have talked to Scott, and I would like to see, he mentioned it too, I'd like to see Scott do a weekly show here. I thought his series on the Constitution, Freedom's Charter, was just exceptional. And the more I hear these kind of things, which have not gone away, the more I want him to do a show where he gets to be Scott Ott and not the guy that I'm paying him to be that everybody hates. It's just not fair. Sir Wilbin says News Actually was fantastic. I thought News Actually was fantastic. Scott, I know you never watch any of this stuff or pay any attention to any of it. Scott Ott makes this website work. I mean, Scott Ott makes the company work. He does all of it. He puts up the videos. He does the headlines, all of it. And when I see this kind of thing, it really bothers me. Let me tell you what would not bother me. This I think is fair. If somebody were to say, look, I'm tired of people criticizing Donald Trump, and I don't like watching Bill Whittle now because I don't like hearing that kind of comment coming back, even though I know Scott's playing devil's advocate, that's a perfectly legitimate comment, and a fair one. And if you don't want to hear Donald Trump attacked, okay, but let's just remember, the reason that Scott attacks Donald Trump is so that yours truly can defend Donald Trump and defeat Scott's attack. And probably every other show, or maybe every third or fourth show, I get the response I want, which is, well, how would you handle diplomacy? Do you think diplomacy between two heads of state is two guys getting together in the middle of an enormous ornate hall with mirrors and bowing to each other and exchanging scrolls? Is that how you think diplomacy actually happens? What would you do? How do you think diplomacy works, Scott, as Mr. Progressive? Well, I can't really answer that question. No, of course you can't. Moving on. I am very, very proud of that show. And I'm proud of it only for one reason, and that is because I've not seen it anywhere else. I've not seen it anywhere else. I'm not seeing it anywhere else. I have yet to see anywhere in the 10 years I've been doing this, have I seen anybody ever apply these principles to the exact news story that's going on and just trot this thing out and say, here's your answer. And it's not my answer, because I've backed off on it a little bit now, only because Scott's getting tired of hearing of it. But I still feel the same. And for the first 100 episodes, I think I probably said this 90% of the times of the shows when it was over. And Scott says, thanks for watching. And we hang on for a second. We cut the show. And I say, geez, where did that come from? I mean, where did that come from? I mean it sincerely, bottom of my heart. I listened to some of the things come out of my mouth about this. And where did that come from? That's actually very, very good. And it's like, well, it comes from understanding this thing. It comes from understanding it. And so my feeling on it is, the harder that Scott plays the part of the progressive, the more conservatives triumph when we win. And he's never once won. And it's not because he lets me win. He's never once won because his philosophy, the philosophy I'm paying him to argue, is not capable of winning against our philosophy, and that's the entire purpose of the show. So, there we go. I do feel happy, not to leave on such a downer note. I have to tell you, having had this experience myself, I'm very happy on those occasions when Scott says to me, I was in the furniture store today, and somebody came up and said, "You're Scott Ott?" Yes, I am. I love you guys. You guys are great. He deserves it. And Scott, I don't know if you're watching, but if you're not, I'll talk to you about it on our shoot tomorrow morning. How about News Actually? Maybe, I don't know. Scott said he couldn't do News Actually because in the days prior to the election, the lead into the election, anything that was even a sideways hint at not 100% backing Donald Trump, any kind of a genuinely comic criticism of the president, just had people just losing their minds. So anyway, I thought News Actually was very, very funny, and I really enjoyed that show. But something, anyway, Scott deserves a chance to be himself so people can see who the guy really is. I suppose people who come here recently, relatively recently, having not seen him as much on Right Angle and not seeing the work he did at PJTV, can take this opinion. But I got to tell you, I spent enough time on this because it's not fair. Anyway, so much for that.